The penthouse overlooking Central Park was perfectly silent, the kind of silence that costs millions of dollars to maintain. Yet a single sentence shattered the illusion of their decade-long marriage like a dropped champagne flute. It wasn't a scream, but a cold, bored whisper that revealed the rot beneath the diamond-studded surface. A secret infidelity funded by the very man she was dismissing. If you are drawn to stories where the most dangerous scars are the ones that don't bleed, and where the silence speaks louder than words, stay with me to see how this house of cards collapses. The rain in Manhattan didn't wash things clean. It just made the grits slicker, reflecting the neon bleed of the city lights. From the 45th floor of the Sterling Tower, the cars down on Fifth Avenue looked like blood cells moving through a concrete artery, indifferent and ceaseless. Lucas Sterling pressed his forehead against the cold floor-to-ceiling glass. The condensation felt grounding against his skin. Behind him, the sprawling living room was a museum of modern comfort. Italian leather, abstract sculptures that cost more than a Midwestern home, and the heavy, suffocating silence of a marriage that had died years ago. The sound of heels clicking on the marble hallway broke the quiet. Rhythmically aggressive. Click, click, click. Elena entered. She smelled of rain and Santo 33, a scent that used to make Lucas's heart race, but now only signaled that she was home late. Again. She tossed her wet trench coat onto the Barcelona chair, not caring that the damp fabric would stain the leather. "You're still up," she said. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. Lucas turned slowly. He held a tablet in his hand, the screen glowing with the monthly statement from the Centurion card. "It's 2 a.m., Elena. The gala ended at 11. Elena walked to the wet bar, pouring herself a generous measure of scotch. Her hands were shaking slightly, not from cold, but from adrenaline, or perhaps guilt. She didn't offer him any. "I went for drinks with the committee. We had to discuss the silent auction." "At the Soho House? With a bill for two?" Lucas glanced down at the tablet. $700 for drinks, Elena?" She slammed the glass down, the sound echoing sharply in the cavernous room. Her beautiful face, usually a mask of practiced socialite charm, twisted into a sneer. "Are you auditing me, Lucas? Is that what we're doing now? You spend 16 hours a day merging companies, destroying lives for profit, and you're worried about a bar tab?" "I'm worried about where my wife is," Lucas said, his voice dangerously even. "I'm worried that you haven't looked me in the eye in 6 months unless you needed a signature on a check." Elena laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. She took a long swallow of the scotch, emboldened by the alcohol and the simmering resentment of a woman who felt lonely in a castle. She walked closer to him, her eyes hard. "Don't pretend you care about me, Lucas. You care about the image. You care that I look good on your arm at the quarterly dinners." She stepped into his personal space, poking a manicured finger into his chest. "You bought this apartment to park me in. You bought the jewelry to mark your territory." "I work for us," Lucas said, a crack of exhaustion finally showing in his tone. "Everything I do is for you." She cut him off. She looked at him with a profound, terrifying clarity. "Let's stop the charade. I don't love you. I haven't loved you since you missed my 35th birthday for the Tokyo merger. I'm here because the lifestyle requires funding." The air in the room seemed to vanish. Lucas felt a physical blow to his chest, but he didn't flinch. He stood perfectly still. "Is that all I am to you?" Elena finished her drink and set the glass down on a coaster with deliberate precision. She looked at him, her eyes devoid of any warmth, only a cold, transactional calculation. Let's be honest, Lucas, she whispered, her voice slicing through the luxury of their life. You are just an ATM to me. You dispense cash, and I dispense the appearance of a happy marriage. That's the deal. Don't act like a victim when you sign the contract. She turned on her heel, her silk dress rustling like dry leaves. I'm going to bed. Don't wake me up when you leave for the office. Lucas watched her disappear down the dark corridor. The bedroom door clicked shut. He stood alone in the dark living room for a long time. The humiliation burned, hot and acrid. But beneath it, something else was rising. A cold resolve. He looked at the tablet in his hand. The glowing numbers of their joint accounts, the credit limits, the trust funds, the supplementary cards. An ATM, he thought. A machine. Machines have an off switch. He walked over to his mahogany desk and sat down. He didn't scream. He didn't throw the crystal decanter against the wall. He simply opened his laptop and logged into the private banking portal. His fingers moved across the keyboard with the same efficiency he used to dismantle failing corporations. Select all supplementary cards. Status: active, action, suspend, joint checking, action, freeze assets, flag for fraudulent activity. He pressed enter. The screen blinked once, processing the request, and then confirmed, access denied. Lucas closed the laptop. The silence in the penthouse was different now. It wasn't empty anymore. It was waiting. The morning sun hitting the penthouse windows was usually filtered through automated sheer blinds, calibrated to wake the occupants of the Sterling residence with a gentle, diffused glow. Today, however, the blinds were wide open. The light was harsh, unforgiving, and blindingly bright. Elena stirred in the center of the California king bed, reaching instinctively for the space beside her. The sheets were cold. Not just cool from a body that had risen early, but stone cold, as if no one had slept there at all. She sat up, brushing a strand of silk-wrapped hair from her face. A small, satisfied smile played on her lips as she remembered the night before. She had finally said it. She had stripped the varnish off their polite, rotting marriage and shown Lucas exactly where he stood. An ATM. It was cruel, yes, but necessary. He needed to know his role. She expected him to be moping in the kitchen, or perhaps he had already left for the office in a huff, likely leaving a passive-aggressive note or an expensive apology bracelet on the vanity. She checked the bedside table. It was empty. No note, no jewelry box, just the sleek surface of the marble. Elena shrugged, sliding out of bed. So, he's sulking, she murmured to the empty room. Let him sulk? She picked up her phone. 3 unread messages from Julian. Did you tell him? I need to see you. The gallery owner is asking about the deposit for the exhibit. Can we sort that today? Her thumbs flew across the screen. Handled. He knows where he stands. Meet me at Bergdorf's at noon. We'll pick out a suit for your opening, then handle the deposit. She hit send, feeling a rush of illicit power. This was how life was supposed to be. She was the patron, the muse, the controller of destinies. Lucas was just the engine that kept the lights on. 40 minutes later, dressed in a vintage Chanel blazer and jeans that cost more than a mid-size sedan, Elena breezed into the elevator. She pressed the button for the lobby, checking her reflection in the mirrored doors. She looked radiant. When the doors slid open, she walked toward the concierge desk, expecting to see Arthur, their usual driver, waiting by the revolving doors with the S-Class idling at the curb. Arthur was nowhere to be seen. Instead, the building's head concierge, a man named Elias, who usually greeted her with a deferential bow, was typing furiously at his terminal. He looked up, his expression unreadable. Good morning, Elias, Elena said, pulling on her leather gloves. Where's Arthur? I'm running late. Elias hesitated. He adjusted his tie, a nervous tic she had never seen before. Mrs. Sterling. Mr. Sterling called the front desk at 6 this morning. He informed us that the private car service has been suspended for the residents. Elena froze, her hand hovering over her handbag. Suspended? That's ridiculous. It's likely a scheduling error. Lucas is just being petty. Mr. Sterling was very specific, ma'am, Elias said, his voice dropping to a professional whisper. He removed the standing authorization for all transportation billed to the family office. Heat flushed up Elena's neck. It wasn't shame, it was fury. So this was his play? A tantrum? Taking away the car like she was a teenager who missed curfew? Fine, she snapped, whipping out her phone to and open the Uber app. I don't have time for his games. Call me a yellow cab if you can't manage your own staff. She marched out through the revolving doors, ignoring Elias's pained expression. The humid air of the city hit her. She tapped the request button for an Uber Black. Processing. Payment method failed. Please update your billing information. Elena frowned, tapping the screen harder. She switched to the backup card, the Platinum Visa. Transaction declined. Unbelievable, she hissed. The network must be down. The reception in Midtown was always spotty. She looked up and saw a taxi with its light on. She hailed it aggressively, sliding into the worn leather back seat. Bergdorf Goodman, she ordered. And hurry. As the taxi merged into the chaotic flow of Fifth Avenue, Elena leaned back and exhaled. Lucas was trying to annoy her, trying to inconvenience her with administrative glitches. It was pathetic, really. He thought making her take a taxi would humble her. She reached into her purse and pulled out the heavy, black titanium Centurion card. The weight of it was reassuring. This card had no preset limit. It was the key to the city, the passport that had opened every door she had walked through for the last 10 years. She visualized Julian's face when she bought him the suit, the way the sales associates would fawn over them, the power of signing the receipt. Lucas could cancel the car, but he couldn't cancel who she was. She was Mrs. Lucas Sterling. Her phone buzzed, a text from Lucas, the first one in months. She opened it, expecting an apology. It was a single line. I hope the reality is as comfortable as the illusion, Elena. She scowled and locked the phone. She had no idea what he meant, and she didn't care. The taxi pulled up to the curb of the luxury department store. The doorman was already reaching for the handle. Keep the change, she said to the driver, handing him a $20 bill from the small stash of cash in her wallet. The last liquid assets she actually possessed, though she didn't know it yet. She stepped onto the sidewalk, chin high, walking toward the revolving doors of the department store. She was about to spend $50,000 just to prove a point. The third floor of Bergdorf Goodman was a sanctuary of hushed tones and hand-stitched wool. It was a place where price tags were tucked discreetly inside sleeves, because if you had to look, you were in the wrong zip code. Elena spotted Julian near the cashmere displays. He looked strikingly out of place, yet perfectly curated. The disheveled hair of a tortured artist, wearing boots that were distressed by design rather than poverty. When he saw her, his face lit up, not with the deep, grounding affection Lucas once had, but with the eager relief of a child seeing a parent return with gifts. Elena, he murmured, kissing her cheek. He smelled of turpentine and stale cigarettes, a scent she usually found bohemian and thrilling. Today, for some reason, it just smelled dirty. I was worried you wouldn't make it. The gallery owner is pressuring me about the venue fee." "I told you to relax," Elena said, brushing lint off his lapel. She projected the air of a woman who moved mountains with a signature. "We're handling everything. But first, you need to look the part. You can't meet the donors looking like a studio assistant." She signaled to a sales associate, a man named Henri, whom she had known for years. Henri approached with the smooth, shark-like glide of someone who worked on commission for the 1%. "Mrs. Sterling?" Henri nodded, his smile tight and professional. "Always a pleasure. How is Mr. Sterling?" "Busy," Elena said dismissively. "We need a tuxedo, midnight blue, something structural, and shoes to match." For the next hour, Elena played her favorite role, the benefactor. She directed the fitting, critiquing hemlines and lapel widths, feeling the familiar rush of control returns. Julian spun in front of the tri-fold mirror, admiring himself in the $4,000 suit. He looked expensive. He looked like he belonged to her. "It's perfect," Julian said, running his hands down the silk facing of the jacket. "But Elena, the price, it's $6,000. "Investment, Julian," she whispered, stepping behind him and meeting his eyes in the mirror. "You are an investment." She walked to the register, placing her black titanium card on the glass counter with a distinct, authoritative clink. It was a sound that usually commanded instant respect. Henri picked it up with white-gloved hands. "Just the suit and shoes today, Mrs. Sterling. And send a bottle of Bollinger to the dressing room," she added. "We're celebrating." Henri smiled and inserted the heavy metal card into the chip reader. Elena turned to Julian, ready to discuss the guest list for his opening. The machine beeped. A sharp, discordant double tone that cut through the soft jazz playing overhead. Elena didn't even look back. "Try it again, Henri. The chip is sensitive." Henri paused. He pulled the card out, wiped it on a cloth, and inserted it again. Beep, beep. The silence that followed was heavy. Elena turned slowly. Henri was looking at the small screen, his professional mask slipping just a fraction to reveal confusion. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Sterling," Henri said quietly, his voice dropping so the other customers wouldn't hear. "It says, declined." "Don't be ridiculous," Elena laughed, though the sound was tight in her throat. "There is no limit on that card. Run it manually." "I did, ma'am. The code is pickup card." "Pickup?" Elena felt the blood drain from her face. That's a mistake. It's a bank error. Lucas must have triggered a fraud alert because I'm buying menswear. She dug into her purse, her fingers trembling slightly as she fished out the platinum visa, then the gold card she kept for emergencies. She slapped them on the counter. "Use one of these." Henri tried the visa. Declined. He tried the gold. Declined. The air in the store seemed to vanish. Julian stepped closer, his expression shifting from admiration to awkward concern. "Elena, is everything okay?" "It's fine," she snapped, too loudly. A couple browsing ties nearby looked over. "It's just a banking glitch. Lucas is moving assets around for a merger." Henri placed the cards back on the counter. He didn't slide them toward her. He left them just out of reach, a subtle shift in territory. "Mrs. Sterling, the system is flagging these as deactivated by the primary account holder. I can't release the merchandise." "Deactivated?" The word hung in the air like smoke. "An ATM," she heard Lucas's voice in her head. "Machines have an off switch." She looked at Julian. He wasn't looking at her with sympathy. He was looking at the suit he was about to have to take off. He looked at the unpurchased shoes. He looked embarrassed. Not for her, but to be seen with her. "Here." Julian muttered, reaching for his own wallet. He opened it, revealing a few crumpled bills and a debit card that Elena knew had less than $300 on it. "Put that away," Elena hissed. She grabbed her cards, shoving them back into her bag. Her hands were shaking violently now. "Henri, hold the items. I will call my husband and sort out this incompetence. I'll be back in an hour." "Of course, Mrs. Sterling," Henri said, but his eyes were cold. He began folding the suit, not to hold it, but to put it back on the rack. Elena grabbed Julian's arm, her grip painful. "Let's go." "But the suit," Julian started. "I said let's go." She dragged him toward the elevator, her heels clicking frantically on the marble. The walk of shame wasn't a naked stroll through the streets. It was leaving Bergdorf Goodman without a bag, feeling the eyes of the staff burning into your back, knowing that the invisible currency of your existence, your access, had just been revoked. The headquarters of Sterling Capital occupied the top 3 floors of a glass needle piercing the sky above Hudson Yards. It was a fortress of solitude and algorithms, a place where emotions were quantified, hedged, and leveraged. Elena stormed through the double glass doors of the reception area, her heels sinking aggressively into the plush gray carpet. She was still vibrating with the humiliation from Bergdorf's. The memory of the sales associate's pitying glance burned like acid in her stomach. "Mrs. Sterling," the receptionist chirped, standing up in alarm. "Mr. Sterling is in a partner meeting. He specifically asked not to be—" Elena didn't break stride. She pushed past the desk, ignoring the security guard who took a hesitant step forward. "I don't care what he asked for. I'm his wife." She reached the heavy oak door at the end of the corridor and threw it open. Lucas was there, but he wasn't in a meeting. He was alone, standing by the window, looking out at the Hudson River. The room was silent, save for the hum of the climate control server. He didn't turn around when the door banged against the wall stop. "You embarrassed me," Elena hissed, the words tearing out of her throat. She slammed her purse onto his immaculate desk, the sound of the metal clasp striking the wood like a gunshot. "You cut the cards. You canceled the car. Do you have any idea how I looked standing there with Julian, unable to pay for a damn suit?" Lucas turned slowly. He looked calm, terrifyingly so. There was no anger in his face, only a blank, clinical detachment. He adjusted his cufflinks. "I imagine you looked like someone who couldn't afford the purchase," he said softly. "Fix it," Elena demanded, her voice rising. "Call the bank. Unfreeze the accounts. I have the gala committee meeting tomorrow, and I will not be humiliated again." Lucas walked over to his desk and sat down. He didn't look at her. He looked at his monitor, typing a few keystrokes. "I can't do that, Elena." "Can't or won't?" "You were very clear last night," Lucas said, finally locking eyes with her. The gaze was empty, like looking into a camera lens. "You defined the parameters of our relationship. You said I was just an ATM to you." He interlaced his fingers on the desk. "Well, Elena, this machine is out of service." Elena stared at him, her mouth slightly open. The cruelty of it, the literal interpretation of her anger, shocked her. "You're punishing me? For being honest? I gave you 10 years of my life, Lucas. I ran your home, I hosted your dinners, I played the part. And you were compensated handsomely for those services," Lucas countered, his voice devoid of emotion. "But the contract has been terminated. You wanted a transactional marriage? Fine. But in business, when one party stops providing value, the funding stops." "You can't do this," she whispered, her voice trembling now. "I have no cash. I have nothing." "You have Julian," Lucas said. The name hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. He's a brilliant artist, isn't he? Surely his love is enough to sustain you. Why do you need an ATM when you have a soulmate? Elena recoiled as if he had slapped her. You think I can't survive without your money? You think I'm helpless? I think, Lucas said, turning back to his screen, dismissing her entirely, that you are about to find out exactly how much you cost. Elena grabbed her purse, her knuckles white. A surge of defiant pride rushed through her, masking the fear. She didn't need him. She didn't need his cold money or his silent judgment. She had passion. She had art. She had Julian. I don't need you, she spat, backing toward the door. I'd rather sleep on the floor than spend another night in that penthouse with you. The penthouse locks have been changed, Lucas said, not looking up. I'll have your personal effects sent to wherever you end up. Elena froze for a second, the reality of her homelessness striking her. But her pride was the only currency she had left. She turned and marched out, slamming the door behind her. She walked back through the office, chin held high, ignoring the stares of the analysts and secretaries. She hit the elevator button repeatedly. To hell with him, she thought as the doors closed, sealing her in the metal box. She would go to Julian. They would struggle, maybe, but it would be real. It would be romantic. She would prove Lucas wrong. She took her phone out and dialed Julian. I'm coming over, she said when he answered. Clear some space in the studio. I'm moving in. She didn't mention she had less than $80 in her wallet. The concept of a loft in Bushwick had always sounded romantic to Elena when she discussed it at dinner parties. It conjured images of high ceilings, exposed brick, and the soulful pursuit of art. The reality, however, smelled faintly of paint thinner and cat litter. It had been 10 days since she walked out of Sterling Capital. 10 days of sleeping on a mattress on the floor because Julian didn't believe in bed frames. They disrupt the flow of energy, he had said. Elena sat on the edge of the mattress, pulling her silk robe tighter around herself. The heating in the converted warehouse was temperamental, rattling loudly before wheezing out lukewarm air. Outside, the screech of the L train passing overhead shook the single-pane windows. She looked around the room. Her Louis Vuitton trunk, which Lucas had dutifully shipped to the address she provided, sat in the corner like a stranded whale. It was too big for the space, blocking the path to the kitchenette. Her designer clothes were spilling out of it, piling up on the dusty floorboards because there was no closet. Are you going to shower? Julian asked. He was standing by the easel, smoking a cigarette. He looked tired. The charming disarray of his appearance was less appealing when she had to step over his discarded jeans to get to the bathroom. The water is cold, Julian, Elena said, her voice tight. Again. Julian shrugged, flicking ash onto the floor. The boiler is old. You have to let it run for 10 minutes. It's not Park Avenue, Elena. It's real life. He said real life with a hint of disdain, as if warm water was a bourgeois weakness. Elena bit her tongue. She wanted to scream that she didn't want real life. She wanted a hot shower and a towel warmer. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the graffiti-covered alleyway. She missed the view of Central Park. She missed the silence. By the way, Julian said, his tone shifting from dismissive to probing. The gallery owner called again. He needs the deposit by Friday, $5,000. Elena's stomach tightened. She had been dodging this conversation for a week, citing bank transfers, legal holds, and administrative delays. I told you, Julian. The divorce lawyers have frozen the liquid assets temporarily. It's standard procedure. Julian put down his brush and turned to face her. The morning light caught the irritation in his eyes. "It's been 2 weeks, Elena. You're Mrs. Lucas Sterling. You can't just write a check?" "It's not that simple," she lied, hating the tremor in her voice. "Lucas is being difficult. He's vindictive." "Well, fix it," Julian said, turning back to his canvas. "I can't lose this slot. This show is my break. I thought you believed in my work." "I do believe in it," Elena insisted, stepping toward him. She reached out to touch his shoulder, seeking connection, seeking the passion that had made her blow up her life. Julian flinched slightly away from her touch. It was subtle, but it was there. "Then show me," he muttered. "Because right now, I have a roommate who complains about the heat and takes up all the space. But I don't see the patron I fell in love with." Elena froze. The words hung in the drafty air. "The patron I fell in love with." She looked at his back, at the tension in his shoulders. She realized with a sinking heart that the dynamic in this room was no different than the one in the penthouse. In the penthouse, she was the commodity. Here, she was the wallet, and a wallet that didn't open was useless. "I'm going out," Elena said abruptly. "Where?" "To get coffee. Real coffee." "Bring me a pack of American spirits," Julian called out, not looking away from his painting. "I'm out." Elena grabbed her purse and the heavy coat that felt too formal for the neighborhood. She walked down the 3 flights of stairs, the graffiti on the walls mocking her descent. She stepped out onto the gray street. She had exactly $40 left in cash. A pack of cigarettes cost $15. A latte was $7. She stood on the corner, the wind whipping her hair across her face, realizing she had traded a golden cage for a concrete box. And the man inside it didn't love her any more than the man she had left. He just cost less to maintain. She started walking toward the subway station. She needed money. And for the first time in her life, she had absolutely no idea how to get it. The bell above the door of 2nd V, a luxury consignment boutique in Soho, chimed with a polite, judgmental tinkle. Elena stepped inside, clutching the orange Hermes box against her chest like a shield. The store smelled of lavender and old money. The kind of money that had been spent, regretted, and put up for resale. A young woman with severe bangs and heavy black eyewear looked up from the counter. She didn't smile. She assessed. "I'm here to sell," Elena said, her voice lacking its usual imperious command. She placed the box on the glass counter. Inside was her Birkin 30 in Togo leather, gold hardware. Lucas had given it to her for their 5th anniversary. She remembered the dinner at Per Se, the way he had slid the box across the table, his expression hopeful, waiting for her approval. At the time, she had merely nodded, complaining that the color was slightly too safe. Now, it was her rent. The clerk put on white gloves, treating the bag with a reverence she did not extend to Elena. She inspected the stitching, checked the date stamp, and sniffed the leather. "It has a small scuff on the bottom corner," the clerk noted, pointing a manicured finger at a microscopic blemish. "And the market is flooded with neutrals right now." "It's pristine," Elena defended, feeling a hot flush of shame. "I barely carried it." "I can offer you 8,000, cash, today." 8, Elena gasped. "It retails for 12, and the resale value is usually higher. I know the market." "Take it or leave it," the clerk said, closing the box. "Do you want the check or not?" Elena looked at the bag, a vessel of memories she had chosen to discard. Then she thought of Julian's sullen silence, the cold loft, and the looming deadline for the gallery deposit. "Cash," Elena whispered. Walking out of the store with a thick envelope in her purse, Elena felt a strange, hollow victory. She hailed a taxi back to Brooklyn, the ride costing $40 she could now afford. She told herself this was romantic. She was sacrificing for art. She was the heroine in a tragedy who gave everything for love. When she unlocked the door to the loft, the smell of turpentine hit her. The space was empty. Julian was out, likely meeting with the curators he kept mentioning. She placed the envelope of cash on the small table near the easel, imagining his face when he saw it. He would realize she was serious. He would hold her, and the coldness of the last week would evaporate. A vibration buzzed against the wood of the table. Julian's iPad was sitting next to his pallet, the screen lighting up with a notification. Elena glanced at it instinctively. Message from Nora van der Woodsen. Elena froze. She knew Nora. Nora was a widow on the Upper East Side, a woman known for her philanthropy and her weakness for young, creative men. The preview message read, I'd love to see the sketches you mentioned, Julian. Perhaps over dinner at Daniel? My treat, of course. I know how hard it is for young talent. Elena's hand trembled as she tapped the screen. Julian hadn't set a passcode on the tablet. Why would he? He claimed they had no secrets. She scrolled up. Julian. My current situation is complicated. I feel stifled. I need a patron who truly understands the raw energy of my work, Nora. Someone like you. Nora. I can help with the gallery fee, darling. Just say the word. Julian. You're a savior. The woman I'm with, she doesn't get it. She's suffocating me. It's just hard to leave when she's so dependent. Elena dropped the iPad. It clattered onto the paint-splattered floor. The breath left her lungs. Suffocating. Dependent. She looked at the envelope of cash, the proceeds of her marriage, the skin of her anniversary gift, sitting there to pay for a man who was already interviewing her replacement. It wasn't just Lucas. It wasn't just the transactional nature of high finance. It was everything. Julian wasn't a rebel fighting the system. He was just another businessman, selling his attention to the highest bidder. And Elena was no longer the highest bidder. She heard the heavy metal door of the loft creak open behind her. Julian walked in, shaking rain off his coat. Elena, he called out, spotting the envelope. Did you get the money? Elena turned slowly to face him. She felt lighter, but it was the weightlessness of a crash test dummy in freefall. Yes, she said, her voice terrifyingly calm. I got the money. That's amazing, babe. He rushed over, reaching for the envelope. I knew you'd come through. This is going to change everything. He didn't kiss her. He didn't say thank you. He just opened the envelope and counted the bills. I have to go out tonight, Elena said, watching his greedy fingers flip through the hundreds. Oh? Where? Julian asked, distracted by the cash. I need to make a call, she said, to secure my future. She wasn't going to confront him. Not here, not in this dirty loft. She had one last card to play, one last shred of social capital. The Met Gala was tomorrow night. If she could just get in, if she could just be seen, she could remind everyone, and Lucas, that she existed. She grabbed her coat. She left the money. It was the severance package for their relationship, though Julian didn't know it yet. The steps of the Metropolitan Museum of Art were draped in crimson, a river of red carpet flowing up toward the stone arches. The air crackled with the frenetic energy of 1,000 camera shutters firing in unison. It was the first Monday in May, the night where New York crowned its royalty. Elena stepped out of the yellow taxi 2 blocks away. She couldn't afford a black car to the curb, and she certainly couldn't let the paparazzi see her arriving in a cab. She walked the remaining distance, shielding her hair from the drizzle with a stolen umbrella from the consignment shop. She was wearing a gown from 3 seasons ago, an archival Alexander McQueen she had kept in storage. It was stunning, dramatic, and undoubtedly expensive. But to the trained eyes waiting at the top of those stairs, it whispered outdated. She ditched the umbrella at the barricade and straightened her spine. The moment her foot touched the red carpet, she felt a surge of adrenaline. This was her arena. She had co-chaired this event 2 years ago. She knew the photographers by name. "Elena, over here," a voice shouted. She turned, flashing her practiced smile, lifting her chin to catch the light. But the flash didn't go off. The photographer lowered his lens, looking past her to a 20-year-old TikTok star arriving behind her. The shout hadn't been for her. Her smile faltered, but she kept moving. "Just get inside," she told herself. "Once I'm inside, in the mix, everything will be fine. I'll find a donor for Julian. No, for myself. I'll remind them who I am." She reached the top of the stairs, where the check-in podium stood like sentinels guarding the gates of Olympus. A young woman with a headset and a severe bob was managing the guest list on an iPad. "Name?" the woman asked, not looking up. "Elena Sterling," she said, projecting her voice with the confidence of someone who had donated 6 figures to the museum's Costume Institute annually. The woman's fingers scrolled down the screen. Scroll, scroll, stop. She tapped the screen, frowned, and tapped again. "I'm sorry," the woman said, finally looking up with a bland customer service expression. "I don't see a confirmation for a ticket." "That's impossible," Elena laughed, though the sound was brittle. "I'm Mrs. Lucas Sterling. My husband's firm bought a table. I'm sitting at the Sapphire table." Sterling Capital did purchase a table, the woman acknowledged. But the guest list was updated this morning by the CEO's office. The seats are fully occupied by board members and key clients. Elena felt the blood drain from her face. "I am his wife. The list says Mr. Lucas Sterling and guest. The guest name listed is..." The woman squinted at the screen. "It's a TBA slot, currently assigned to the CFO." "This is a mistake," Elena insisted, her voice rising. People were starting to stare. A queue was forming behind her. "I have walked this carpet for 10 years. You know who I am." "Ma'am, I can't let you in without a valid QR code. The ticket is $50,000. Unless you have proof of payment?" The words hung in the humid air. $50,000. Elena looked past the woman, through the glass doors. She could see the warm, golden glow of the great hall. She saw women she had lunched with last month, laughing, holding champagne flutes, adjusting their diamonds. They looked like a species she was no longer related to. "Please," Elena whispered, her pride fracturing. "Just check again. Call Lucas." "I can't do that, ma'am. You're holding up the line." The woman signaled to a large man in a dark suit standing discreetly to the side. "Security, could you assist?" The security guard stepped forward. He didn't touch her. He didn't have to. His presence was a wall. "Step aside, please, ma'am." Elena stepped back. Her heel caught on the edge of the carpet, and she stumbled, catching herself just before she fell. A few cameras flashed then, not to capture her beauty, but to capture the stumble, the moment of weakness, the fall of Rome. She retreated down the side stairs, away from the cameras, away from the light. The rain had started to fall harder now, cold and unrelenting. It soaked through the silk of her McQueen gown. It plastered her hair to her skull. She stood on the corner of Fifth Avenue, shivering uncontrollably. She watched the black SUVs rolling up, delivering the chosen ones to the party. She realized then that Lucas hadn't just cut off her credit cards. He had revoked her citizenship. Without his funding, she wasn't a socialite, a patron, or a wife. She was just a woman in a wet dress on a street corner, with nowhere to go and no one to call. Julian had betrayed her for a better offer. Her friends only saw her when she was illuminated by her husband's money. And Lucas was inside, or perhaps watching from his tower, having finally closed the account. She reached into her clutch. Her phone was dead. She looked up at the penthouse buildings lining the park. She knew what she had to do. There was only one place left to go, not to fight, but to surrender. The elevator ride to the 45th floor was silent, save for the dripping of water from the hem of Elena's ruined gown onto the polished floor. Elias, the concierge, had let her up with a look that wasn't deference or judgment, but profound pity. That look hurt more than the rejection at the Met. When the doors slid open, the penthouse was dark. The city lights below cast long, stretching shadows across the marble foyer. It looked exactly as it had the night she left. Pristine, expensive, and cold. Lucas was in the living room. He wasn't brooding by the window this time. He was sitting in the Barcelona chair, reading a file by the light of a single-floor lamp. He didn't look up when the elevator dinged. He didn't look up when she stepped into the room, leaving wet footprints on the Persian rug. "I'm home," Elena whispered. Her voice was cracked, stripped of all its socialite polish. Lucas turned a page of the document. The sound was loud in the stillness. "You don't live here, Elena." "Lucas, please." She took a step forward, shivering uncontrollably. The adrenaline of the gala had faded, leaving only the bone-deep chill of the rain and the realization of her absolute poverty. "I made a mistake. I was confused. Julian, he used me. He didn't love me." Lucas finally looked up. His face was unreadable. "And you think I do? We have a history," she pleaded, hugging her arms around herself. 10 years. We built this life together. I know I said terrible things. I know I hurt you. But I'm here now. I chose you." Lucas stood up slowly. He walked over to the wet bar, but he didn't pour a drink. He picked up a white envelope that had been sitting on the counter. "You didn't choose me, Elena," he said, his voice calm and factual. "You chose solvency. You chose the ATM because the other machine was empty." "That's not true," she sobbed, the tears finally mixing with the rain on her face. "I realize that I need you. I miss us." "There is no us. There is a provider and there is a dependent. You made that very clear." He walked toward her, stopping just outside of touching distance. He extended the envelope. "What is this?" she asked, looking at his hand. "It's a check," Lucas said, "for $50,000. Elena stared at him, confused. "What?" "It's the price of a ticket to the Met Gala, or 3 months of rent in a decent apartment, or a flight to Paris." He placed the envelope on the console table beside her. "Consider it a severance package." "Lucas, stop!" she cried, reaching for his hand, but he pulled back. "I don't want your money. I want my husband." "You can't have both," he said. "And honestly, I don't think you ever wanted the husband. You wanted the access he provided." He walked past her toward the hallway leading to the master bedroom. He paused at the threshold, his back to her. "I filed the papers, Elena. The lawyers will contact you in the morning regarding the final settlement. It will be fair. I'm not a monster. But this..." He gestured vaguely at the space between them. "This account is closed. Where am I supposed to go?" She whispered to his back. "It's raining. I have nothing." "You have $50,000 on that table." Lucas said, not looking back. You're a resourceful woman. You'll survive. You always do when the funding is secured. He walked into the bedroom and closed the door. The click of the lock was soft, final, and absolute. Elena stood alone in the dark living room. The rain beat against the glass walls, a rhythmic drumming that emphasized the silence inside. She looked at the closed door. She wanted to pound on it, to scream, to tear the apartment apart. But she didn't. Slowly, her hand reached out to the console table. Her fingers brushed the cool paper of the envelope. She picked it up. It was heavy. It was security. It was the only language they had ever truly spoken. Elena Sterling wiped her face, clutched the check to her chest, and turned back toward the elevator. She pressed the button for the lobby. As the doors closed, blotting out the view of the life she had lost, she didn't look back. She checked the amount one last time, and for the first time that night, she stopped shivering.